Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. We're going to be talking about the challenges of being a lead director, and who better to have that conversation with than my guest today, David Porteous, who's the lead director for Huntington Bancshares, also serves as a board member with Jackson National Life Insurance of New York. Dave, welcome to the show.
TK, it's great to be here in New York City on a beautiful fall day.
Well, hopefully you'll feel good because we have some tough questions for you today in this show. And first of all, I want to talk about the movement that we see in the trend with shareholder engagement. There's been a lot of pressure by investors to make sure that they have the opportunity to meet and talk to and understand the director policies. They want to understand the company, which is often delivered by management, but they also want to have this interaction with directors. We saw a letter go out from CEO McNabb at Vanguard. Vanguard's one of the largest institutional investors in the country, saying that they were encouraging shareholder engagement, everything from creating videos of the directors to introduce them to shareholders, all the way to face-to-face meetings. So as this trend starts to continue, and we're seeing this happen, and we're seeing more and more companies participate like this, first of all, I'd like to hear your philosophies on shareholder engagement, but also, has it put pressure on you and the companies that you're affiliated with to find board committee chairs that not only have the skill set to be a chair, but now they have to have sort of the skill set to be able to meet with shareholders or talk with shareholders or be in the public setting like that? So first of all, your views on engagement.
Well, first of all, TK, the chair of Vanguard ought not to have to send a letter out to companies saying, engage in more robust shareholder engagement. From my perspective, shareholder engagement should be a core competency of a company. It should be part of their foundation. After all, the shareholders are the owners of the company. So we ought to be engaged in a very open, transparent, and robust way with our shareholders. And I think first and foremost, that needs to be driven by the CEO of the company in conjunction with the CFO and other members of senior leadership, where they are meeting regularly with shareholders, both institutional and retail shareholders, to engage in very open and robust and, again, transparent discussions about the company. Now, that being said, I believe that when that happens, and then the management reports back to the board governance committee, if that's the committee that has a responsibility, and the full board, that sort of interplay, that sort of communication obviates most of the demands to have to meet with the directors directly. Now, if you have a situation, which does happen from time to time, where there's a need to meet with directors, then certainly the ability of your chairs of comp committee or audit committee should be prepared and willing to meet with shareholders. It shouldn't be necessary to do that a lot, but a company should be prepared to do it. And yes, that means the chairman of those committees are going to have to be comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, just like you've had to rethink through who serves as lead director because of all the skill sets that are needed, I'm sure that that's the same case with the committee chair. So let's look at another challenging topic. We see a lot of pressure these days on things like term limits, age requirements, tenure, and there's a common feeling among corporate board members and governance experts that none of that would be necessary if people had vibrant and effective board evaluations. And it makes sense because age sometimes is a relative issue. Some people do fine at that. You want a mix on the board. You want some age and some veterans so you have a balance on the board of past history and experience along with new people that might know cyber risk better. But doing effective evaluations maybe isn't as hard as it is to actually replace a director. Now, I'm going to ask you this question not as a member of Huntington Bancshares, but just in your own opinion. Tell me how you feel about that and the process of replacing a director that sort of truly needs to be replaced.
Well, once again, TK, I think the push for mandatory retirement age, term limits, and other issues like that are a result of some frustration with boards not engaging in a very open, transparent, and thorough process as it relates to board evaluation. And I think first and foremost, the board needs to establish that foundation. That foundation, I would submit, is done first by the board deciding what are the characteristics or what are the skill sets that our board needs, not just now, but also in the future. And then having the individual board members look at those characteristics, score themselves. I'm a world's greatest expert, or I don't know much about that, or something in between. Because that gives, I think, the template for the board to look at and say, we may be overweighted in some areas, we may be underweighted in other areas, and part of that also should be how long people have served. And that is, you probably don't want everybody on your board to have been on the board 30 or more years, any more than you want them all to have only been there for a year. So you need to have that sort of diversity. And then you need to, with that, then look at the board in a collaborative fashion and in a collegial fashion, sort of do your annual assessment. And sometimes that assessment means that a board member, not through no fault of their own, but maybe because technology has changed or the world has changed, that you're going to need to bring on some people on the board with some expertise that isn't currently on the board. And there may be some people on the board that's important to sort of transition them sort of into retirement. Now, what I have found in those sort of discussions, the more you put them off and the more difficult you make them, the more difficult it really is. The best thing to do is have a great process and then sit down with the individuals. Because if you have a good process, has a lot of credibility, and you sit down with the individual, they're usually in complete agreement and understand.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, sort of history and studies have shown that the most effective way to change the behavior of a director is to do a peer-to-peer. You know, hearing comments, and typically this is anonymous, but hearing comments from their own board members about what they bring to the table or don't bring to the table, or fall asleep at meetings or whatever it might be. Those have proven to be the most effective methods of changing behavior. We're seeing more and more evaluations every couple of years make sure that they do a peer-to-peer. From your experience, have you had any experience with a peer-to-peer?
Well, the answer is that is the most effective. Now, that really sort of gets the issues out on the table. And interestingly enough, TK, for example, at Huntington, if I can use our board as an example, our two longest serving board members, who have been on for nearly 30 years, said, Dave, if you need our spot, you can have it. Now, they're really important. We need their longevity. We needed sort of their experience and expertise, and said, thank you very much, but no thanks. And, you know, that's the sort of relationship that you hope you have with all of your directors. Be there for 2 years or 30 years.
Yeah. Now, last issue I want to talk about you while we have you today is in June of this year, Chairman White at a conference, SEC Chairman White at a conference said that she was going to ask her team at the SEC to start investigating a universal ballot. Universal ballot, for those that don't know, means that you have the opportunity, instead of having to vote for management slate or an activist slate, now you can pick individuals, whoever you think would be competent, and sort of make up your own board. That certainly is moving the pendulum towards giving the shareholder more power, but it also creates a interesting situation that they have to address, because I would hate to think that if I was the chairman, outside chair of a board, that I might lose my head of the audit committee or head of the comp committee all in one fell swoop and be given two people that have no qualifications to do that. I'm sure that the chamber, who has had great success when they feel that something isn't right for governance and business overall, might raise their hand on this issue as well. But the point is, she encouraged all companies to do this even before the SEC does that. So I'm curious on your opinions. Is this a positive thing? Obviously, it helps certain shareholders, but what do you think of the concept of universal ballot?
Well, DK, first and foremost, I appreciate whether it's the SEC or other regulators who put forth ideas, concepts, challenge all of us to think differently sometimes, to consider other alternatives, to ask for comments, and to be thoughtful in our response to it, which I've seen from the SEC, I've seen from other regulators, which as a board member I appreciate. Now, this particular suggestion hopefully is going to get a lot of debate, because to me the dangers outweigh the potential benefits. And by that, what do I mean? Once again, it's incumbent upon the board to have good communication plans where their board members and the experience and expertise of their board members, why somebody's chairing the audit committee, why somebody's chairing the comp committee, is known to the shareholders. And I don't think generally boards have done as good a job communicating the experience, expertise of their existing boards. They need to do that, so that, quite frankly, it's not as necessary to sort of bring in competing slates, because you're hopefully able to show diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, diversity of experience, diversity of race, all of that. And I think if you do that, you help to protect against the need to have sort of the universal ballot. Because the fact of the matter is, if you do that, you could have a board that has a great plan with people chairing the comp committee or the audit committee who have world-class expertise, which you would hope that they would, wake up one morning and you've lost your audit chair, you've lost your comp chair. That would be incredibly disruptive and could really be harmful to the institution and the management of the institution, because you do need individuals who have experience, knowledge, and a sense of history of the organization to be able to provide that to the organization, to management, and to shareholders, to sort of help you get through not just the good times, but the tougher times too. So I am very cautious about that, and my view would be that the dangers of that would outweigh the benefit. But I appreciate that she and others put forward ideas to challenge all of our thinking.
Well, David Porteous, Huntington Bankshares is lucky to have a lead director that can serve as a role model to others. It's a pleasure for you to take the time to come join us on the show. I know I've threw some difficult questions to you, but thanks again for your time. And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take a look at another critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.